Welcome to Athlete Complete, where we host raw and open conversations about the details that impact performance from current and former professional athletes for parents, players, coaches, and fans. It must be, you were talking about this a moment ago, Ben, about like being around the holidays at ATI and seeing, the revolving door of athletes like James or Brad or some of the other like elite level guys. What's the best part about working with really high level athletes? Is it the shit talk? Is it seeing results on the field or something else?
I don't know, because that's not in your control. I think it's the connect genuinely, and I think that's what gives me a lot of energy and give a damn for what I'm doing is just being relatable, connecting, and helping guys through struggles that I've experienced and be able to share and guide them through what they're experiencing. I do think that's probably one of my biggest skill sets is the ability to connect on that level, and why guys have a lot of trust with what I'm doing. There's loads of different types of practitioners out there. There's guys that are like so incredible at their one specific tool that they have. But me coming from the sports realm, being a pro athlete, being a professional coach, being a professional strength coach, being on professional medical staff, working in professional academies, so seeing it from youth all the way to pro, and kind of after it's almost 20 years of pro experience now, seeing how it all links up and how you can connect it all and how one thing's starting to affect the other, and be able to help someone see that so they can take control of what they've been experiencing and take steps forward is the best part.
Cool.
So, I mean, reality, it's growth, right? So connecting and then seeing people grow and the outcomes, sometimes they vary, like some are good. Sometimes shit happens that you're just not going to be able to control, which is totally okay. But even another marker of growth is how do you respond to the thing that didn't work out well for you, kind of deal, so be able to see that stuff's probably my favorite part. And I think it's the thing that really motivates me, which is also, it's tricky to do that in big scalable settings, I suppose, because connection requires you to care deeply and get involved with someone on a whole nother level. And it's just hard to do it with loads of people. So I think my sweet spot is working in small groups or with individuals and help them grow at whatever that is, whatever that means to that person.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say like results and stuff like that. Like you can't control the results, so that's a hard like growth mindset to have, right? And I was listening. I saw this thing on Instagram. It was Tom Brady talking, and he was talking about who he is as a person now. And he was saying everyone always asks. That's a really hard word for me to say. Asks him about his wins and all that kind of stuff, and how much success he had. And he was saying that the person he is today is more morphed by his losses and like what he's learned through his losses, and that is what's made what he's kind of like realized the most value from is like what he's learned from his losses, and the things that he struggled with has made him who he is today. I think that people kind of like, maybe myself included, like it's hard to look at losses in a positive way, but really like we become what we learn from our losses, and like how valuable that is kind of lost in the moment because losses hurt, but they're also an extreme opportunity for growth.
Yeah. Even if you get your body right, get your mind right, you get that ready to play, you're at the top of your game, you have teammates, you play opponents that, you don't sometimes surprise you. You can't control the results. Yeah. I think that's an important, that sort of like desensitizing failure is really super critical. Not just for kids, but for adults too, and it's tough because you think like you're out there to win, you're out there to play, compete, and be victorious, and you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose a lot. And desensitizing yourself to those failures and saying like, this is okay, this happens, and what am I going to do? You know, this is something that you talked about a lot, James. How do I respond to this? Do I sulk? Do I, you know, whatever like that, or do I bounce back, check out what I did wrong, etc.? Yeah.
Change that word from, I think, desensitizing, because you want to feel, to diversifying your understanding of what it is you're feeling. Because the negative aspect of all that stuff is going to be the thing that weighs the most on you, that feels the worst. But if you can break it down and really reflect appropriately and diversify what actually happened within this game, yeah, the outcome was a loss. But was it all negative? And I'm feeling bad right now, but can I diversify the word bad? And am I feeling bad just about one little particular aspect of the whole thing? And can I take note of what was positive and how that made me feel? That will allow you to make probably better decisions moving forward about how you respond to it. Because if you lump it all into, I just feel shitty because we lost, then everything gets lumped into that and you don't make good decisions after the fact.
It's too broad.
It's too broad, yeah. Yeah.
I think too, like, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
It's too emojied. It's an emoji feelings. Like, no, we gotta break that down into like a continuum of like, okay, you feel bad, but like, where's bad on the positive negative scale, and then where are all those little tiny hash marks that fall in between. And so I do this with people all the time. It's like, tell me what that felt like, and then give me 3 different words around that so we can start to place them on this scale. And more often than not, it's not as negative as they initially reported it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Including pain.
You ever read that book? What's it called? Something neutral, like neutral thinking. You ever read a book about that? Mm-hmm. I read this book about neutral thinking because they're talking about how, like, you know, negative thinking obviously isn't good, but positive thinking.
Trevor Moawad?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. Anyway, he was saying like positive thinking can kind of like get kind of like, I don't know, kind of BS also, you know, where it's just sort of like, it's just words and you don't really believe it because it's just all so bubbly and happy and kind of bullshit, you know? Whereas like neutral thinking, like what's true? You know, like what are the facts? Like what's actually going on? That kind of brings you back to that, like that mid ground, that neutral of like, there's not anything good, there's not anything bad. It's just like, this is what is, you know? And like, I don't think there's anything wrong. This is kind of switching gears, but like, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to win. You know, like competition's good, you know, like wanting to win and being upset with you when you lose is fine, you know, but it's also like, when you do lose, it's like, okay, what do you do now? You know, that's what counts, is like by number 1, not giving up. Number 2, what are you learning from when you lose? And then what adjustments are you going to make, you know? And then you continue going and going and going. And that's how you continue to get better. As soon as you stop doing that, that's when you stay stagnant and people end up passing you, and then you're done, you know?
For sure, because you're talking about consistency, and what's going to equal more wins over time is consistency. If it's super happy joy time when you win, but super sad sucky time when you lose, that wave and that pendulum swing is not going to be sustainable. It's that balance, right? You can't get too high, you can't get too low. You can be proud of yourself for winning, but even again, if you go back to diversification, be proud of yourself, but also take note of people that helped you get there. Mm-hmm. So you share that. And then when it's negative, you know, like same exercise, but it's totally right. Like it's more about a consistency factor over time that's going to equal more wins at the end of the day. Because heck yeah, we want to win. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point.
Yeah, everybody wants to win. Like that's how you measure success. But I think for the individual, I think like organizations can measure success by like wins and losses to a degree. But individuals, like I feel like we need to like redefine what success is. You know, because you can't control the results. And you know, if your measure for success is more like process driven stuff, where like you're doing everything that you can possibly do, you know, you're locked in on every play, you're locked in on this and all the small things, and you're doing everything that you can in your control the right way, then you're giving yourself the best chance for success. You know, like you can't control the outcome, but you can control, you know, for me pitching, it was like I can control everything up until I let go of the ball. So my thought process, before I step on the mat, like my mechanics, so I'm thinking about something. But for me, it was more so like, is my mind in the right place before every pitch? Like that was my goal, was like, I want to be thinking, this is my approach, my mental approach. And it was just hitting the repeat button every time. Did I baby that pitch? Did I have fear or doubt behind that pitch? And a lot of the time, like you'll notice when you throw it to the baseball players listening, like if you throw a pitch or do something when you're feeling kind of like doubt or you're hoping's a big killer in sports. As soon as you're hoping, you're dead. But like it's full on aggression, and it's full on like, it's just commitment. When you're playing at that level, you're fully letting go, you're fully in the moment. And that's when you're in that zone that you talk about, and there's fear in there, there's doubt there. You're not in the zone. You're too worried about the results in the future and guessing at the future. You're not in the moment, So it's really hard to be in the moment, but that's what it's all about. And if you can do that every play, every pitch, like for me, that's what success was. That gave me my best chances at success.
The example that comes to mind too is, Russell Wilson was sort of a disciple of, not a right word, of Trevor Moawad. And I think that's who the author. So when he was working really closely, and I've seen Russ talk about that neutral mindset over and over, talk about whirlwind career, talk about, from Seattle to Denver and that situation, and now fucking crushing it in Pittsburgh, like, yeah, that was a weird 2 years in Denver, and now I'm in Pittsburgh and playing really, really well and having some success, and also just staying neutral about it. It is what it is. I prepare the same way. I go through my progressions. I focus in the same way. I recover in the same way. It's just a great example of it.
And it's interesting because
sorry, go ahead.
Well, the 2 points, like even with, like, I have a kid who's got an ACL issue, and we're working on that. But like session 1 was, let's define what success will look like and write it down with clarity. And then let's write down the processes that we need to do to get to that point. And then let's write down with clarity the behaviors that are going to be required of you to get those processes going to get to that end result. And then all we start doing is reducing it to focus on the behaviors required, including maximizing yourself in this phase of recovery. How are you recovering at home? How are you balancing out like your well-being? But like, it's clearly defined behaviors, so there's no guessing at it, and that's all they focus on, which is it's a simplification of what is a complex topic. And then you go over to like Russ's situation. These mindsets all are fantastic as long as the supporting environment around you is catering towards it. And you can see the difference of being in Seattle to now going to Denver, where the environment, like, they weren't buying a shit. They're like, we're not into this. Then you go to another environment where, like, yeah, we support you, and you thrive in it. It's like growth mindset, which is just an example of many types of mindset, it flourishes only when the environment is catering to growth mindset people. If that's not what the environment wants, it's just not going to work out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I bet you he learned quite a bit during that failure time in Denver too. I bet you he would say, if you talk to him, like, that prepared me for what I'm doing now,
Right. Yeah.
You think so. But it's just interesting. And me and Sean talked on the phone earlier. We talked about the differences between being a cultural fit, so fitting a construct that's already in place, or the organization looking at you as a cultural addition that's going to enrich the environment and make it even better. And those are two different types of places to be. I think at a cultural addition with enrichment has a higher opportunity to perform better, because it's going to be like, I think Pete Carroll's probably phenomenal at that, like taking all these kind of quote unquote rejects and all these kind of guys that are like in certain environments are like bad behavior guys, but in his environment they just made it badass. Like that part, that's pretty cool.
That is cool. Yeah, it's interesting.
James, quick, make a joke, because you're not.
I'm not being funny enough. Oh, jeez.
Call out your buddy too, so we can all call him out.
Yeah.
What's his name? What's his name?
Chad. Chad says I'm not
His
funny
name's
enough.
Chad. Chad says you're not
Chad.
funny.
I'm not
Chad's-
funny
you're not
to
funny
Chad.
enough.
Of
Yeah.
course, his name's fucking Chad.
Yeah,
About
but
your-
he even told me like over my career when I did my like my post game like talks or whatever when I'd pitch, he's like, dude, like you're being so boring. Like just like be yourself. And I was like, I have a hard time like not just like doing the whole like kind of act, you know? Like I wasn't the guy that wanted all the attention or to be like you know, have sound bites out there and this and that like some guys do. And that's fine if that's your personality, but I was just like I didn't want that heat, you know. I just wanted to focus on my game. I didn't want to be like a media sensation at all. And there was this like mask that went on, you know. It was just very like bland answers and keeping it boring because I didn't want to be on the front page saying something controversial. And so it's kind of been hard for me to kind of like, even in this setting, you know, like kind of bring out some personality and just be myself. It's hard to do because like I'm still aware that like, you know, there's not many people listening to this yet, but like there's some people listening to this, and like just being myself and being like open to people either disagreeing or judging me, I guess, for like who I am. You know, I have to get comfortable with that. But yeah,
I just judged you, by the way.
yeah. See, well, there you go.
There's one
People
rep.
judge. People judge.
Yeah, you can't take Chad too serious.
Yeah, no, can't take guys named Chad too serious.
No,
Guy's named Chad.
I actually genuinely have a cartoon version of that guy in my head right now.
Yellow like The Simpsons.
Yeah. No, there's two versions though. There's one version where he probably could kick my ass.
Square jaw.
Square
stubble.
jaw. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got like just greased up jet blonde hair.
It's a little spiky. It's a little spiky hair, you know. Not
Does he have
kinda-
spiky hair?
Sort of, not
in real
really.
life?
Just kind of it grows like straight up, you know. It does not.
Does he
It
have
doesn't like
frosted
lay down.
tips?
He did at one point in high school. We still give him hell for that.
Yeah.
Frosted tips. Yeah. What was I
About
going to say?
Chad.
I was going to say something about the whole process thing. Getting back to more serious talk. That's something I noticed when I was with the Yankees. Is like when we were in the postseason, a lot of the guys were like focused on the World Series, you know, and we were in the DS at the time, the ALDS, and you could just tell that it wasn't like the focus wasn't on like what we were doing. And I think that's something that the Yankees, I think, have been struggling with. You know, they're this legendary organization that's known for winning, right? And I think like that pressure, like gets to the players, and they think they're too focused on winning that other than like what's the process of winning and focusing on that process, you know, and being where their feet are. And they have like fantastic players, and I think that's why they get away with it to a degree. You know, they haven't won a World Series in a while, but like they still win because they have such good talent. But if they put that talent together with like focusing on the process instead of focusing on the result, I feel like they'd have a lot more success than they're having currently.
Yeah, totally agree. I say this to kids all the time when they have games that they're like, oh, we should win this one. It's like, well, there are no easy games no matter what. But games can become easier if you execute on your processes at a high level. And, you know, you look at a Yankees roster compared to whoever else is, and it's generally always stacked. It's like, well, those guys still have to execute on their processes for this to work out well. And if they think, well, we should win and we're going to do the World Series, it's like, all right, you're already setting yourself up for a negative outcome here.
Yeah,
Right.
it doesn't matter how good you are, you can fuck it up, you know?
Yep. So defining that success is critical, and defining is individualistic, and it's another thing that we can continue to break down into a simpler and simpler form. To go back to what you said in one of the earlier episodes about what's the simplest thing you do when you throw a ball, and like break it down to that. It's such a fun thing you can do on so many different levels and different components of your life. To like, it just boils down to basic behaviors that you got to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just really does.
True.
Yeah. Be efficient with your time, be efficient with your movement, be efficient with your schedule, and yeah, the flow. I'm reminded So I'm coaching now 2 basketball teams and jujitsu. So I've got 6th grade boys, and there's some athletes. Yeah, I mean, there are some coordinated kids. A couple of them play like select, also, and rec league, which is what I'm coaching, and they're flamboyant and talented and wild and think, they have this insane confidence, but like they cannot execute. They it's so hard to install any type of offense whatsoever with these kids because everyone wants to get the ball and improvise and take on 3 guys and get to the paint to score or chuck up another air ball 3-pointer like that never goes in. And so it's really tough to get these kids to like get to their spots. And then we run play number 1 or play number 2. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, but the process is it's impossible with these kids. Like I can't get them to do shit. And so we run a lot in practice. We run a lot, a whole bunch. Yeah. Nobody understands, or everyone forgets that play number 1 is a high screen pick and roll. It's the simplest shit, but they just cannot execute on it. And my fear is, and it's not, obviously I'm not losing sleep over it. My fear is that we're going to lose a lot of games and thus learn a lot of lessons, because we're a team of good individuals with terrible execution. And that weighs heavy on me. Like I came home from practice, last night and was like, dude, this is going to be a long season because these kids don't listen for shit,
Yeah.
Well, this is a good opportunity as a coach to go, who am I working with? And how do I meet them where they're at?
Yeah.
And table your expectations, because
right.
being elite for an individual is the best version of them. So where are they at right now? And then what little percentage points are they getting better each time? It may not be adding up yet at the end, but it will.
Yeah.
So it's really tabling your expectations.
Excellent point. Right.
And wearing that hat of practice.
I had this coach in college that would always talk about like stop being cool. Like it sounds like these kids are like stuck on like looking cool and being cool.
Yeah.
So he's like his big thing was like stop being cool and be good. What's cool? What's cool? Being good. What's not cool? Sucking. So stop worrying about looking cool and being cool, and focus on your game. Winning is cool.
Stop being cool.
Stop trying to be cool.
Stop looking cool. Be cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. That's a good one. Stop looking cool and be cool.
Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna learn some lessons this season for sure. It's fun, man. I got sort of I signed my son up. I coached last year too. I didn't sign myself up to coach again just because shit's going on. And then like the week before the first practice, I get an email from the league. It's like, hey, your son's team doesn't have a coach yet. Like, oh, all right, okay, I'm in. I'll do it. And I enjoy it. It's fun. I'd rather me do it than someone who's never played basketball or who doesn't know how to talk to kids. But yeah, between 6th grade boys basketball with a bunch of clowns, 3rd grade girls basketball who are so sweet and they listen so good and they work their asses off and they do it with a smile. And then, jujitsu, juniors and young kids age bracket, like the same thing. It's the process. And jujitsu is an excellent example of there are things that you have to do to protect yourself from being choked out. There's things that you can't turn around and let someone get on your back. Like that's the beginning of the end. You can't, there's process, there's systems up to all of this. And so systems and processes is going to just be the next 4 months of my life and explaining this and talking about this over and over, 4 days and 5 days a week.
Yeah. and try not to make it boring, like if they're listening to paint dry. It's hard to do. Yeah.
You got at those ages, you just got to turn it into a game.
Yeah, you gotta make it fun somehow, for sure.
I mean, you're talking about pick and rolls and things like that. Like, create metaphors for whatever that means, and like, you don't need to do video sessions on it or whatever else. Like, they're kids.
Yeah.
There was this. There was something I was watching where it was like this coach. Oh, it was the quarterback on Netflix, and it was they were talking about the Chiefs and Mahomes and stuff. And who's the coach there? I'm terrible with this stuff. The coach in Kansas City,
Andy Reid.
Yeah, and they were saying that sometimes to keep it fun, he lets the players come up with a play. So they'll like create some play that's like fun for them, and it's like they created, it's their thing, and it kind of gives them some agency and sense of ownership over the team and the plays they're running. And they ran the play like in a game that the players came up with, and it worked, and they scored a touchdown, I think, and they were all jacked about it. They're having a ton of fun with that because like it was their play. It's an idea for you with your 6th grade boys.
Great idea.
It's tricky about that though. I mean, especially at those ages, because you'll get the teams that you're going to play against that have that one kid that's like super duper good, and he can route you, or she can route you, or whatever else. And like, look, that's the best team out there. It's like, no, they have a kid that's like, he's a baller. Like,
yeah, just better than everybody else.
At those ages, God, it just doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. It's like physically just so much further ahead. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It hasn't leveled out yet.
No, and you see it in soccer too, because you have these kids that are like athletically just so much more dominant, and they score a lot of goals. But more often than not, those ones are not they don't end up where you think they do. It's the late bloomers. It's the people that have imagination and joy and understand what they're doing, and those are the ones that like end up making it at the end of the day. Like,
well, it makes sense. Like the ones that were always the best just because they're bigger and more developed than the others probably felt like they never had to work for it. And then all of a sudden they get to a point where everyone's where they are physically, and they don't know how to work. They don't know how to, work hard for it or fail. If you've never failed, it makes it really hard. I know.
You got to get to puberty and let the get an even playing field.
Yeah, in baseball, like they usually won't bring up a guy from the minor leagues until he's had a slump. Like they want you to slump in the minor leagues and come out of it before you come to the big leagues, so that when you do slump in the big leagues, it's going to happen, that you know how to get out of it. You have some experience getting out of it, because if your first time failing is in the big leagues, it's really difficult mentally to climb out of that hole.
Whoa, that's so cool.
I mean, that's a massive failure, right? That's like your world imploding.
Yeah. And then if you've never failed before in your life, like, yeah, that would be really hard to deal with. So a lot of teams will wait for you to fail. And it's hard on some players because there's some that are so talented, so good, that it takes a while for them to fail.
Is that really? I mean, is that really that common where like a guy's been lighting up AAA for 2 years but hasn't had a slump yet, and he'll just wait until he goes through something like that?
Well, I think the Mariners had a hard time with it with Kelnick, when he came up, because he was crushing it from day one in the minor leagues, just dominating. And then remember, he came up to the big leagues. I don't know if he had failed yet in minor leagues. I don't think so. And he really struggled. I think he went, what was it? It was something, it was like a record-breaking thing, like 0 for 56 or something like that, and then got sent back down. And it was really tough on him mentally, I think. Just like coming up to the big leagues and failing for the first time and like really failing, and then having to go down. And then he crushed it in AAA again, came back up, and he was okay, but wasn't like crushing it at the big league level. And I think he actually had a really good year last year. Like he's gotten better, as time's gone on in the big leagues. He's still in the big leagues. But I bet if you asked him, like it was hard, to mentally work through that and get to a point where he felt comfortable, being in the big leagues and failing in the big leagues and then getting back to it.
Well, and the change of scenery didn't he go to the Braves?
He went to the Braves, yeah, so that probably helped too.
This is something that I see often with some of my clientele because, private school kids, kill it academically. They kill it on the field. They're just used to being successful because they're kind of ingrained into that. And, like externally they have it put together, but they haven't been exposed to something that's going to trouble them to fail, or they've been taught, or it's called Stanford Duck Syndrome, where you're supposed to give off like everything is easy and nothing really bothers you, like water off a duck's back. But underneath the water, things are chaotic a little bit. So I think with some of the more troubling issues we see in sports is people growing up in those type of environments as well, where they start to experience failure but have no clue how to handle it and what that does to their identity, because it's been ingrained in them that they are always successful and things are always kind of quote unquote easy for them, even though it's not true. It blows up their world quite a bit.
Well, it's a glass of water analogy, right? Like you're holding a glass of water out in front of you and you fill it up, with all those negative experiences that you're holding in, not dealing with. The longer you hold that glass of water, the heavier it gets, and then eventually it's just, you drop it and your world falls apart.
Yeah. It's a troubling trend, and it also confuses people as like, well, how could this kid have be depressed, or how could this kid have committed suicide, or how could this kid have done this or that? It's like they came from affluent families, they have everything kind of sorted out for them. It's like that's a version of out of balance too. Like that's really out of balance compared to what real life offers for them. So there's a lot of kids that I work with that have killed it in the youth sports sector, and then they go to college and they deal with difficult situations, and it's like it's a steep learning curve because they don't have the tolerance to it yet. So it's interesting,
it's kind of the first steep part of the funnel, is high school to college. I feel like it's a funnel going all the way up to the professional levels. And that's the first kind of sharp change, is like you're playing with every high school's best 2 or 3 players if you're playing Div 1, So it's the competition level changes big time at that level, going from high school to college, and you're going to get, challenged. And then it keeps on going. You go to pro levels, and then you're playing with the best college players, and then you go each level up, it's a little bit more, and then you go to the big leagues and you're playing with the best players in the world, the best minor league players. The percentages are extremely low, and it keeps on funneling down. And eventually the biggest difference is what's between the ears, because most of us are very, very similar, skills wise, like physically. There's a few, that are like, a few players that are kind of on the far edges that are like just better than everybody. And that's just the way that it is. Physically they're better, but most players are very similar physically. And, the difference is, what you're working with between the years.
Yeah. As I look back through the episodes that we've done, we've covered a lot of different topics. We've had, professional athletes and sports psychologists, and these themes that are emerging don't have easy answers, right? There's not a punchline or a mission statement that can solve the sort of athletic dilemma that all of us as athletes, as youth athletes, getting higher and higher up, that we face, whether it's injury or burnout or mental strife or not dealing with failure. There's not easy answers here, and so as we continue to go forward, we're going to keep scratching at the surface of this. We're going to keep talking about ways, ways, different models, new ways of thinking about both youth and high level sport professionals in the professional world, to present some new ideas to people, to start discussions around some of these new models around culture, failure, injury, or even, the physiology about how we can get the best from our bodies. And it's encouraging to me. I'll be totally honest. It's encouraging to me because there's going to be lots and lots of great content as we get, these guests. And also it's a little puzzling to me because there is no easy answer. And so I'm sort of conflicted about like, well, cool, we're going to talk this through. And also the answer is always going to be, it depends, which kind of bothers me, I guess, to a certain extent.
Sort of. And I agree and disagree all at the same time, because it's kind of like nutrition. There's certain no-does. These are just not good for you. And there's a lot of no-does that are going on in the sports performance realm that are just like, that's just not good for you. That's not actually helping your performance. That's just, we don't know why we're doing that. So there's things that we can totally remove, replace, things that are well-intentioned that we can refine that aren't that complicated. It just takes a little bit of a cultural shift to put them in play, and awareness of like, oh, well, that wasn't really working out. This might be a little bit better. And then as you get into the micro individual level, then yeah, it gets a little more complex. So like nutrition analogy again is what, if I want to find out what's going on, I really need to do your blood work and do gut panels and do saliva and all this stuff that if you really want to dive into it, yeah. But it's not as complicated. It doesn't need to be that complicated. I think people look at it at the physiological level and all that stuff. Yeah, that's good rationale for changing some of these behaviors, but you don't need to be able to be in a white coat and deliver that information. You just need to understand
really look at it,
the broad sense of it all, and change some
better
behaviors that are affecting it.
Yeah.
Get a real office. Can tell he's at ATI. Unbelievable.
You guys froze.
Get a podcast studio.
Right?
Well, you wait. James, like, what do you?
I don't know. My take is that like people are complicated and they want to make it complicated. Our brains want to make things complicated, but really, like it's simple. Like the processes are simple. The self-talk needs to be simple. What you're trying to do is simple, but people are complicated, and it's hard to make it simple, and that's what makes it complicated. I know that's kind of, you have to wrap your head around that, but like it's simple. But yeah, what I just said, I can't even say it again because I just, but what I just said made sense to me. Like, yeah, what we're trying to do is simple, but it's hard to make it simple, and people are complicated.
The analogy that comes to mind is like the iPhone, right? And Steve Jobs talked about like, it's incredibly hard to make something that it looks as simple as this. It's streamlined. It's like, it takes iteration, it takes innovation to get to that point, to design something or create something that looks so simple and works and functions so simply.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it all comes down to how can you make it simple? Because like if you make things really hard, it makes it really hard to implement in a sports setting. Things are moving fast in sports, right? Like you don't have time to make things complicated and be thinking too much. Like I was always at my best when I wasn't thinking, and I think if you talk to most players, they're at their best when they're not thinking. It all happens intuitively, and that's through practice, yes, and reps. But you can't be out there thinking about what you're doing. You have to just be doing it. And that's how you are at your highest athletic mode, is by not thinking and just doing. And to do that, you have to have processes that are simple. You keep it simple. But it's difficult to keep it simple because we want to make it hard. Hey, welcome back, dude. Your internet sucks.
Bruh.
Makeshift office. Let's go clean it up.
Gee whiz, Ben. Gee whiz. Yeah, that's an excellent point. That we're approaching it from a perspective of that we want to make it complicated. We want to make it nitty gritty, and it doesn't have to be that way. Both at an individual level, at a sport level, at an organization level. That there are certain things that you can absolutely simplify and streamline and not overcomplicate. And that's kind of what we talked about with Patrick Wisdom, or was it Hanniger? We were talking about like data analytic. Oh, it was Hanniger. And he's like, yeah, you can have all the data. You can have on your sleeve, like where to set up and where to shift in right or left field or at shortstop. But the fact is like, that only goes so far. That sort of analysis is maybe inferior to a player's judgment on where to stand, right? Or where to throw a pitch.
Yeah. It's like that paralysis by analysis kind of thing, like if you have so much information you're trying to take in and all of that, like it slows you down, versus just acting athletically and not thinking, and just kind of like that first step is going to be quicker if you're just reacting versus if you're thinking like, oh, I got to do this and then this and then this and then this, like that makes you choppy and slow.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of a good segue then, because we have not really laid out explicitly what Athlete Complete is as a model, as a service offering, as what Athlete Complete really gets into. And with the connection that I'm seeing is there are certain things that have been discovered that about organizations or about culture or about individual athletes that are pretty much universal, and understanding and analyze those things and then simplifying them into changes. Now I'm characterizing Athlete Complete, and it's really Ben and James that are really thinking about this really clearly. Ben, maybe take a second to sort of lay out what Athlete Complete is.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a culmination of a couple things, and it has to do with my own playing experience and my failures as a player. Started off on the physical side, started off with my injuries, learning about those, and then recognizing that my mindset, my mental state was affecting my injuries and my recovery. So learning about that side of things, and then learning how those two things played off each other. And then educating, youth athletes on all that, because they're being exposed to that same level of stress as I was as a pro. And then piggybacking off some of my successes and my failures in professional coaching, and maybe potentially negative environments that I set up there, and why I had failures in that realm. And then learning about how those environments play into the physical and play into the mental. So it's this big interrelated system that we got to kind of analyze, and that's what Athlete Complete is attempting to do. It's looking at performance environments and maybe some of the holes they have in the operations, or some of the values that they have that may not be idealistic to creating high performance, or maybe they're well-intentioned and they're just not doing it. And then educating on that macro level that we're talking about, and then diving in and getting a little more nitty-gritty on the individual level of working on their mental wellness, physical wellness, and giving them that foundation in order to perform well, and then reincorporating that into a team matrix. So we data collect on environments, submit reports to the leadership, and then start to work with the individualistic pieces within that, and get it moving towards positive outcomes in a team setting. So it kind of depends on what a group organization needs at that kind of current moment. Sometimes they need a complete overhaul Delta program, change everything and restart, or sometimes it's just refinements in different ways of executing on things. And that's what Athlete Complete is doing.
So what does the audit process look like? Because I know you've done several of these with organizations. How do you audit, a team like the Sounders organization?
I mean, we can data collect. I have an algorithm that collects cultural health. So you fill out surveys on an iPad, and then you get an entire report on cultural health, connectedness, psychological safety, all these kind of key metrics that fit into a healthy culture and environment. You do corroborative interviews with key members of staff. So where are your pain points? What are your values? What are you trying to accomplish here? Are they aligned with staff, with players, with the support staff? Because in reality, at the end of the day, the players on the field are a byproduct of everything around that organization supporting them into doing the best thing possible. It's not just the players, it's all the stuff that is contributing. If it's a youth organization, you look at the same thing. What are your values? What are the proposed outcomes for these kids? Okay, how are they being supported by the coaches? How are they being supported by the parents? Are they driving problems? Or are they actually helping them out? Like we get without awareness, you don't know. And then you can get into working on the individual basis. So through education, small group education, on both the physical and mental side, and then pop it back into the team setting.
So are we doing as an organization what we say we want to do? Are we providing,
Yeah,
right? We're providing an environment that is in alignment with our goals, right? Like that to me, I mean, since you've been talking about and developing this and working on this and then taking this out to market and working with actual professional teams and college teams, and I'm sure, and I know that you're talking to collegiate and youth organizations too. I was blown away by it when you first started to talk about it, because it's like, it's so obvious. Like
it is obvious.
It's so obvious. Like the crest or the mantra of a youth sports organization is all about X, right? Well, are you doing that? Are you working on that? Are you cultivating that? Or is it all talk and hot air? And I think building out the processes like you have, I think is necessary at every level.
For sure. And because it is so obvious, like there's a global recognition that there's a problem with some of the stuff. But for people to look in the mirror and go, okay, where do I fall in this, has been some of the most frustrating and interesting at the same time aspects to it all. Because it's like, yeah, there's big problems, and it's heartbreaking the way some of the stuff's working out. But it's, it's not my kid, or it's not our team. Our team's really good. It's like this lack of awareness of like where they fall in this category is really impressive to a certain degree. And then when they do have awareness, the steps that are needed to kind of make the change, which aren't too challenging usually, but they require effort and intention, and it's a process. It takes time. Like just like any sort of performance thing we're looking at, like these are the steps in the process. It's not realistic. It's tough to do. Like it's such a resistance to solvable things, and it's just, again, to a certain degree frustrating, but to another level, it's just like, wow, this is so bizarre, because the issues we're running into is like everyone wants to fall back into default mode. It just takes work.
Well, it's easier,
It takes
right?
effort. It's easier. Yeah, it's path
Yeah,
of
it's
least
easier
resistance.
to talk the talk than walk the walk, as always.
Yeah. And a hallmark of bad cultures, and we can take all of this youth sports as an entire global thing right now, and is blaming, complaining, and defending yourself versus like looking in the mirror and going like, what can we do to be better? Are you taught exactly? Is your culture written on the wall, or is it being lived in your heart?
Mm-hmm.
And
that's people
more
in
often
general.
than not, yep, it's written on the wall and it's not in the heart. And I mean, I took some courses on culture, and I am with sort of plagiarizing it, but it's the best I know how to do at this point. Take that stuff, and it's got to be intentionally lived in your brain to go into your heart. But that space where the intentional living requires effort, and that's where people fall apart.
Everybody wants to wear Carhartt shit until it's time to do Carhartt shit.
Well, at the end of the day, are you a poser or not?
Right. That's it. That's exactly it.
You want to make change? Here's how you do it. And it's, yeah, the byproduct at the end of it is a much healthier environment. Mental wellness will be catered to and supported, because mental health wellness is a foundation for good performance. Physical health and wellness will be catered to, because that's a foundation for great performance. Like you can't have great performance sustained anyway without those two things being in place. And that's what you want, but you're not taking the steps to do it.
I have a pissed off 1.5-year-old wants to get out of her bed, so I should probably roll here.
Shout at her.
Yeah. She's
No
ready
problem.
to get up.
We'll put a boat in it. Nice one, James. We made it an hour. Good work, dude.
Thanks.
So
Yep,
like,
solid nap. We're ready to get back to it. The real work happens now.
Carhartt shit.
Carhartt
shit, bro.
exactly.
Don't be a poser.
I like it. Athlete complete Carhartt shit. There's a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, just leave that open when you bounce.
What do you say?
Just leave that tab open when you leave the group.
So what do? Just press leave, but leave it open. All right. Later, guys.
Later.
Kisses. Yeah, I really love the connection, and what we can put a wrap on this, but I love the connection between the head and the heart. And this is something that I talk about in my coaching practice is you can think yourself, you can bullshit yourself all day long. Tell yourself that you're doing the right thing, that you're in alignment with the values of this club or organization, or yeah, I'm the stud athlete, so I do things this way, or the Yankees are doing this. This is the Yankee way of doing things. Well, does it trickle down to the actual players? And you can think that in your head, but your head is also where your ego is. And so you can make up a whole bunch of shit. You can convince yourself of anything until you get it into your heart, which has neurons of its own. The heart has a brain of its own that doesn't contain the ego that lets you bullshit yourself. And so I really love that. I have a practice where it's an Ayurvedic practice where you breathe out and you take what that which is in your mind and integrate it into your heart through this breath work. And I do this with, corporate clients all the time, because when you go through that process, the things that you say you want and you bring them into your heart, everything changes. There's new gaps in your game. There's new vulnerabilities and blind spots that kind of reveal themselves when you go through that process.
Yeah, and when I talk to people about the whole thing, we get lost in the physiological aspects of it all and the connection. And I'm like, look, all this stuff, and they're like, this is super complicated. All this stuff I have on my whiteboard and I'm showing you right now. I'm talking about it because I think it's really fascinating. It doesn't matter. This has nothing to do with your executionable action items. Like, you don't need to learn this, and you don't need to fix anyone else's problem. Like, and I think that's probably been a fault of mine, just because I'm such a nerd that's like, don't you think this is cool? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Like, these are just behavioral issues. I mean, like, for me, like, as a pro athlete, first off, kind of piggyback off some of the stuff we talked about, I didn't have any goals. I didn't have processes. I was just doing max out, rev it, go. And then, I'm going to relax now, so I'm going to drink and chill out. It's like, that's just a behavior. Now kids have what's their beer now? Phone stuff, things like that are distractions. Like,
yeah,
they're just behavioral issues. Like, hey, yeah. And they have the same consequences in your brain. They have addictive qualities. They have these things that are affecting you. So it's like, yeah, my kid's he's not abusing anything. You got to look at the context of that word. There's a lot of things that are being abused that you don't really realize that are affecting what your desired outcomes are.
Sure.
So do you want to change these things? If not, okay.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Yeah. I think of this too. And again, I integrate this into my coaching is like, what you do is behavioral and how you be is emotional. And those are two different things. And if what you're doing is in alignment with who you be, on the inside, then your life gets better. You make better choices. You're more fun to be around. You attract opportunities, and it takes practice. It takes repetitions and work and thought.
Gosh, I've gone through it so much. Here's the physical education, but they go back in their environment and they come back with the same problems. Here's the mental education, go back in the environment, they come back with the same problems. Okay, here's the environmental education on how to support the mental and the physical. Oh, but like, it gets lumped into, well, that's too tough or that's too hard, or it's, again, emojifying all the thoughts and feelings with it. It's like, okay, now we need to learn about emotional intelligence and diversity so you can actually break that down and recognize that it's actually not as hard as you think it is, or it's not as daunting as you think it is. You can make better decisions now. It's just like interesting and exhausting and fun and all the stuff at the same time. Because like, you're just like, okay, here's another tool then to kind of figure out how to solve the problem, just to open your fucking eyes about what's going on right here.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to shake you.
Yeah. Well, and you have to try. You have to try a bunch of different things until something resonates, and maybe it never does, and that's okay too. But if this model or this concept isn't kicking, isn't working, isn't leading to change, maybe the one that you introduce in 2 weeks is like, oh my gosh, that makes sense to me. thank you. Okay, now I can go make these changes.
I have hundreds of use cases of my individual clients where this is making dramatic positive changes.
Yeah.
And this is just, and it's more about setting up the stage of how we're going to create success for this person. Before we even get into the nitty gritties of it, it's already just leaps and bounds.
Yeah. Well,
And it's taken me years, and I study every day, and I listen to this stuff every day, and I speak it every day, and I preach it every day. So it's so second nature now. But that's how you attain new skills. And this is the problem. People don't want to dive into that level of work. But they're like, yeah, it doesn't really fall into like our coaching and this and that. I'm like, well, then you're not coaches.
yeah.
What you're just teaching an X's and O's thing. That's like such a small part. There's the how and why and what's happening, what you feel about it, and all that really are critical.
Yeah. Totally true.
Training robots is lazy.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm looking forward to continuing to unpack this and talking about the framework, as again, as we do more episodes and get more listeners and more watchers, they're going to be able to comb through these older episodes and really get an understanding about what we're talking about with this project. And you could really easily sit and take notes to every single one of the conversations that we've done and come out with 15 things that are interesting to you. And
I think a big problem too, and I know you're wrapping it up, but it's when people hear these things like culture and mental health, and they now they put it in a bucket, and it's like they're equating things to soft or equating things to whatever else, and it's like, listen to how I talk about it. It's for performance. It's going to help you. And my mental health and wellness and my culture that I'm going to create is going to kick the shit out of anything that you do.
Yeah.
Like, does that sound like somebody that is here to hold hands and do all this stuff? No, I'm here to achieve results and win.
Yeah.
But there's no need to break a human down for it anymore. And actually, it's just showing that it's not even the right way to do it anymore.
Mic drop. That's an excellent way to end. Fantastic. Well, good stuff. The show goes on. The beat goes on. Back to your day of changing people's lives as we roll into the holidays.
Yeah.
After a nap, maybe.
I got a new little like sleep mask that has like the darkening and the soundproof, and you can Bluetooth like some meditation into it.
Ooh, that's nice.
10 minutes non-sleep deep rest. Kind of cool.
That's cool. What's it called?
Dude, I think this one's just called like Manta, Manta. There's tons of them. Instagram got me. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, it's fun, dude.
I've actually had a couple clients do it post session, and so I'm gonna use the Mendy pre-session, this post session.
Love it. Yeah,
to kind of like wrap it up.
I love the Mendy. Okay, Benny.
How do we do?
This is good stuff. This is
how bad was my the Wi-Fi just kicked off. I couldn't get back on.
Oh, it was fine. James took the ball and ran with it just fine. Smooth.
I was right in the zone. Are you recording still?
Yeah, but I'll cut
Switch it off.